We're going to do something a little different for our final bookshelf of the year. With the holidays upon us, our last title of 2024 has a Christmas theme. For many of us, the holidays can be the most wonderful time of the year, but for others, not so much. A new anthology of nonfiction stories explores feelings of alienation, abandonment, and loss that are all too common during the festive season and how people can be at their best during the worst of times. Here to talk about Upon a Midnight Clear, more Christmas Epiphanies, is editor J.J. Lee. Welcome.
Thank you.
I should point out this is the second book in this series. It follows Even Better Next Year in 2023. What inspired this?
Well, I teach nonfiction and I talk to a lot of people about their memoirs and their memories. And I kept on getting people's really horrible or interesting, fascinating, difficult Christmas or holiday experiences. And I just felt that I could collect them at some point. And the publisher at Tidewater Press one day just called literally out of the blue and said, "Hey, you know that book you've been talking about for years? Do you want to do it?" And we just ran with the idea of collecting people's true memories of not so good, even worst case scenario Christmases. And it's been a wild ride ever since.
Now, the idea is to invite new and emerging Canadian writers to take part in this. How many submissions were there for this book?
Oh, gee, I get a slightly filtered list. So I would say we get maybe 48. So we've got a 4-to-1 ratio, and that's not a bad thing. We don't need hundreds. The reason why is that, I was a radio producer and story developed lots of documentaries. And so I'm really interested in people who are good writers with great stories. And then we sort of talk to them about what their process is, what their memories are, and what are the underlying themes that are lingering in their memories. It's really an incredible process. And I feel like you really get to know the writers far beyond just editing their text. And so we take 12 in, and each book has 12, and they're extremely touching, marvelous stories. I'm very proud of all of them.
Uh, Tough question. How do
Hmm.
you whittle it down to these particular 12 stories?
Well, I think I'm a mixologist, right? An anthologist job isn't to just pick the 12 best stories. It's not a contest. And so what's happening is we're looking for themes or ideas that don't collide or clash or overlap too much, that we're providing a variety of stories, that there's moments of humor, there's moments of sort of heartbreaking sorrow in some of these. Uh, all of them are moving. And so when we select, we're looking for that combination, just the way a producer might help a band select the cuts on an album, if anyone does that anymore. And so we're trying to build an album of stories that will reach people when they read it during the holiday season and will mean something to them.
I was about to liken it to how we used to put together mixtapes.
It is a mixtape. It's a mixtape um, out of love for the characters and the memoirists who created their earlier selves on the page, but it's also a mixtape. And mixtapes are given to people you love often, right? And that mixtape is for the reader out there or who loves Christmas, but Christmas doesn't love them back all the time. I think that's the formulation now.
So not exactly the 12 best stories, but the 12 stories that live together the best then.
And mean the most when they're together. I know people who have already picked up the book this season are already rereading it. And so that's thrilling, and it's a real flattering to all the authors that are involved in the project.
Now, the book opens with a story called The Gift by Michael
Mm.
McLean, in which the writer remembers his upbringing and how the kindness of a neighbor changed the way he would view the season. What made you open the book with this story?
Well, to me, I got chills reading it. I feel like it's a Canadian classic. It was just like, it's not even believable. Like if it wasn't nonfiction, I would say it was forced, in terms of the plot and the twists that are in it. It's an incredible story. I think every Canadian should read that story, actually. It's so meaningful. It covers so much ground in terms of all sorts of issues that are far beyond Christmas. And there's just an incredible amount of love in it. And it just shows the power of generosity. And it's not only the generosity that the writer as a younger person receive, but the generosity that the story offers from the author to the reader. And so it just had to, I just it makes my season just to think about that story.
I want to read you a line from the story, and
Mm.
it goes something like this. The best Christmas gift ever helped me realize that acceptance of people in your circle guarantees you the freedom to love. I am unwrapped a little bit each year, my memories, my experiences, the essence of who I am. What can we take away from that?
Well, I think that's it. I think it's trying to sort of, you know, be comfortable with the past, make amends with the past. Doesn't mean that what happened was right. I'm a memoirist. We encounter a lot of the difficulties in our past when we write about them. And in a part, it's not just about forgiveness per se, but the idea of forgiving yourself for having experienced it. Because I think sometimes we hold it against ourselves. And I think these stories have a generosity of spirit in them, have a welcoming of the past and accepting that the earlier self couldn't have experienced those events any other way than they experienced it. And so, in a way, you're accepting your younger self finally when you write these stories. You finally let them off the hook for all that happened. And so, I think that's part of the gift that the author, Michael McLean, the writer of the gift, is offering to the reader. And so that's what I hope people take away, that they can embrace their memories, they can remember fully and remember in a way where they realize they're not that person anymore, that they've grown up, they've evolved, and they can re-engage with the past in a totally different way.
Now, the holidays are a time of family, but families can be, by their very nature, very difficult to navigate, whether our own families or our adoptive families. So that brings me to another story in the book that I think many will relate to, and that's Half Empty by Jennifer
Mm.
Connell. This one is about someone who questions her role in her adoptive family. She and her husband have fertility issues. She wonders if she could ever accept an adopted child as her own. And speaking to this nature of family and belonging, what made you choose this story for the book?
Well, it's an incredible story. The structure is incredible. The character problem is actually really subtle. There's these twists and turns in it. And in a way, and Jennifer Pownell's talked about this online, about it's a mark of shame for her how she reacted at that particular Christmas. And so I just was fascinated by her exploration and her willingness to share and her openness to deal with a lot of uh, uh, I would say it's pain, but it's also that triumph and that moving to healing and embracing a situation that's been really difficult and finding a way through it. I just think there's so much perseverance and just the self-awareness in the essay that I think is commendable. I really love the story, and ultimately, I actually really love how it ends. I think it's a terrific tale that is equal to anything that you would find in fiction.
Of the 12 stories in the book, do you have a clear favorite?
Oh, that's a tricky question. Um, I don't know if I can actually pull favorites per se. I will speak up for Lillian Au. She wrote a story called Arvia, and I got to see the story at a very early stage, and it didn't make the cut in the first volume. And Lillian just kept on working on the story, refining it, creating more structure, and actually uncovering the actual truth of the story, why she wrote it for real. And sometimes you have a motivation or a feeling when you engage in an essay that you don't actually account for in the actual story. And so by I recognized there was something going on in the story, and she just really went at it and was very brave of her to sort of uncover her feelings about her parents in relationship to her own journey to Arviat, which is in up north, and just dropping off the simple act of dropping off a sewing machine as a donation had all this sort of familial drama tied up to it, and she just finally acknowledged it in the essay. So it's an incredible journey, and I think it's a terrifically funny story too.
I find the use of the flashback device fairly effective in that one as well, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when we engage with Christmas, even if they're happy ones, all our past Christmases seem to, they're like minions. All the past Christmases sort of creep up behind you and stand and, are sort of huddled around you as you engage in the present Christmas. And I think that's really why I enjoy these Christmas memories because we're finally sort of acknowledging that our past Christmases inform the way we act in the holidays. I mean, that's the whole point of the Christmas Carol. The past, sort of pushes into the present and even to the future and how we act. And I think I mean, that's the tale is to sort of, you know, be okay with having a past and be okay with letting it bleed into the present and understand how it's informing what you're doing with your family now during the season.
The ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future.
Exactly.
What do you hope people take away from the book?
The most important thing I think is I hope people feel comfortable expanding on their self story. Sometimes when you talk, if you ever talk to your parents or your grandparents about what they did in the past, sometimes it's the three lines, I did this and this happened and that's it. And that's the end of the story. And in these stories, in this anthology, Upon a Midnight Clear, you see an expansion of detail and experience and thoughts and feelings. And I hope people are mindful that, when people ask for your story, especially a younger generation, that you take the time to unfold it. I think that's the one, and to find a way to expand and bring out the life of that detail because it means so much to other people, your children, your grandchildren, if you're able to expand and really share your story in full.
And we can expect a third volume, I'm sure.
I'm hoping so, yes. Thanks for asking.
All right. The name of the book is Upon a Midnight Clear, More Christmas Epiphanies. It's published by Tidewater Press. My thanks to editor J.J. Lee.